This is John Haller, and this is a special recording. My friend, you've met him a couple times on our podcast. Jonathan Feldstein that's how you say it, right? Feldstein.
Yes.
Okay. Because, something, it's funny when you're in Israel, everybody always says, when you pronounce something, they go, well, like, we don't really say it that way. But then you go someplace else and say it that way. And they said, well, we don't really say it that way up here. We say it. So you're always wrong. So
I always tell people I've always been called worse.
this is my observation. So this is Jonathan Feldstein from Genesis 12:3, and he's on a tour here in the United States doing some media interviews. And so I came up to Ann Arbor to meet with him. He's become a very good friend, and we were talking about all the people we know together, like Bill Koenig and Bill and Claudia Koenig. Claudia Koenig has now passed away. But so listen, let's. Why don't we just talk about why you're here in the U.S.? And I've got a couple things. We'll try to keep this one a little bit shorter than my usual 2-hour drone. I'm like the Lex Fridman of Bible prophecy videos. Do you know who Lex Fridman is? He's an MIT graduate, and he interviews all these guys, some of whom are crazy people, like that I don't really care for, like John Mersheimer from the University of Chicago, who wrote the Israel Lobby, who I think has major issues with his view about Israel and that type of thing. And he'll do like Elon Musk, he'll do Sam Altman, and he'll do these 3-4 hour long interviews, and he'll get 1 or 2 million views on it. So he's a very bright guy, and he's interesting, but he's like, to me, the king of the long form interview. And I'm not anywhere in his category. I didn't go to MIT, by the way. I don't think I could have. I don't know if I would have wanted to, even if I could. So anyway, why are you in the U.S.?
So this is my delayed book launch tour for Israel The Miracle. It's a book that was, can it be seen?
Yep.
Published, it was conceived in October of 22. It was delivered to the printer August of 23, 9 months. It was produced in a month and came off presses 2 weeks before the war began in Israel. And I was supposed to originally have been here in the States November, December, doing this book launch media tour. That was delayed because of the war, especially because my son was in Gaza. My son-in-law was in and out of Gaza. And so the timing was not appropriate. And so in the middle of 4 weeks, goodness, I've lost count of how many states I've been in and how many more I'm going to. But one of the beautiful things is that the book is being very well received. It's more relevant now because of the war. I think I'd rather not have had the war and had a perfectly good book. But what's really nice, John, is that let me explain what it is. First of all, anyone who wants to get it, israelthemiracle.com. And as friends, for anyone who's watching, please use the discount code Jonathan10 when you check out, and you get 10% off. That's my pleasure, although my publisher doesn't like when I do that so much. But really a pleasure. I want people to have this book. It's a compilation of 75 essays by Christian leaders all over the world writing about why Israel is significant to them. Our lone essay writer from Congo received his copies and sent me pictures yesterday, and it's stunning. It's a coffee table book. It's stunning. And so here I am promoting this book. What's really nice is that despite the fact that we really weren't able to do much promotion before, we pre-sold over 3,500 copies. We got down below a certain level that I was comfortable with in our fulfillment center here in the US. And as a result, we have now, just as of this week, ordered thousands more, our second printing. And you'll get this because you were down there. We also have the second printing coming in conjunction with Kibbutz Be'eri, along the Gaza border, one of the communities that was most horrifically devastated by the attack on October 7th. And so not only are we committed to give the proceeds back to bless Israel, specifically war-related projects, but we're also now investing in a community and their major print shop so they can continue to have resources just to rebuild.
It's an interesting time. I think I interviewed you. You had been down to the Gaza
Yeah.
border, and we talked about that. Have you been down there again since? Or?
So I don't remember which time, but I've been there twice.
Okay. I think it was between you'd gone down there with Nicole.
Yes, correct.
My
And
friend
you,
Nicole.
but that was the where you were having the conversation with her right after that.
Right.
So
right.
that's the last time I've been there, but I've been up on the Lebanese border since.
That's the funny thing
Yeah.
about Israel is that once you know somebody, it's like you know somebody. You're connected to everybody.
Correct.
And like it's the old
2 degrees of separation.
2 degrees of separation instead of the Kevin Bacon game that they play out in Hollywood.
Right.
But so how's your? I know you said you had some children and daughter, son-in-law, I think, and another son who was in Gaza. How did that go?
Oh, first of all, how it went is they came back. Thank God. My son was discharged, I think, my son's a paratrooper. He was called up October 7th. That's how we found out about what was going on that day. We had our phones off, our TV off, although we were waken up that morning by air raid sirens, sent to our bomb shelter 4 times that morning, and knew something was going on, but no one could have imagined. We didn't know until that afternoon. He is a newlywed still. They were married July 2nd. 3 months later, he was called up into the army. He spent 4 months in the army, 2 of which were in combat in Gaza. Very hairy, very tenuous. Because he was discharged right before I came here to the States, I haven't really had a great deal of time to talk about it. There's a word I need to remember. You might even know it. One of my professors at Emory, who I visited on my first stop, told me there's a word for when the soul, the DNA of your soul is impacted when your persona changes, and that's how we all are. I think, I'm sure for him, for my daughter-in-law, this is something that we'll all carry with us for the rest of our lives. But they're back. He's cramming to learn an entire semester of academic studies for his university program in 1 month. Hopefully he'll succeed at that. And my son-in-law, who's obviously married to my daughter, they have 3 children. It was very hard for all of them, for my grandchildren. The 1-year-old less so, because he didn't know, but no less hard for my daughter, who's home alone with 3 little boys, 5 and under, worried about her brother, worried about her husband, worried about our country, working, trying to keep the house clean, all the normal stuff. And that's been a relief that he's also been discharged for now. They will be going back to reserves. We don't know when. We don't know for how long. The army can plan, but our neighbors in Lebanon and Hamas in Gaza don't really follow our playbook. So they will be okay. We will be okay, but I think we're still very early on in a national trauma of biblical proportions, to be honest.
So, how's the mood in the country right now, based on what's going on, what's happening?
So the mood in the country is still traumatized. There's still grief. I don't think most Israelis have had the time to process the grief. Those who have friends or loved ones who were killed October 7th or since then, not all the families of the hostages. You can see the bracelet. Bring them home now. We have been promoting this all over the world. 134 people who are still hostage, many of whom are known to be dead already or believed to be dead already. But they all need to be released. They all need to be brought home. The families need to be able to move on. And for those who are alive, I don't want to imagine the unspeakable things that they've suffered now in nearly 6 months, right? I think we're starting to see a little bit of the unraveling of the unity that was very, very pronounced. We're seeing more calls for the government to resign or for elections to take place. That's all probably very normal. The problem with that, John, is that we came into this war from a period of tremendous political divisiveness. And my hope is that we don't go back to that divisiveness, that we always hold on to the sense of unity that we've had these last months, even with our differences, even with the blame that has yet to be ascribed on our end as to why we were so unprepared. on October 7th. That will all come, but I just pray that right now, that as people have their views and we have views that stretch the gamut, that we will remember that we still have to be together as people.
From my perspective, looking at this, when the Gaza operation started, I'm probably by nature I'm an attorney, so I have a bit of a. We spend all of our lives in the law figuring out what can go wrong. So we're sort of by nature sometimes a little bit.
Where were you before October 7th? We needed that.
I know. So I'm a little pessimistic, and I try to analyze things. But I must confess to you, I am very impressed with what the IDF and the forces have been able to do. And and I know in your community you've had a lot of young men who have fallen. There were 300 soldiers, male and female, massacred on October 7th. There were over 300. But I must confess, I thought the death rate among soldiers in the IDF would be much, much higher than it is. Do you kind of have that same feeling that they've done much better than you anticipated? It's hard to say that.
I haven't thought about it from that perspective, but I have been obsessively waking up when I'm at home, waking up early to watch the 6:00 news on TV, because that's when the protocol is that we announce the names of the casualties from the day before.
But then too, by the same token, when you're waiting for the news, they would inform you first. So if you haven't been informed, then you know it's safe to watch the news.
For us,
at least from your personal standpoint.
I'll share this. On a personal level, I didn't leave the home for, very little, with very little exception, for weeks on end, because I was terrified of getting a knock on the door. I was terrified of my wife being home alone and getting a knock on the door. And that's the protocol. They literally knock on the door. And so even at the beginning of this war, when I would drop off something at a neighbor's house, their son was in Gaza from the very beginning. And just my instinct was to knock on the door. And I said, oh my God, I can't do that, because a knock on the door can create such trauma. So you have to reprogram your mind to ring the doorbell. For little things like that. But yeah, casualties could have been much worse. We're not out of the woods yet. I don't think Gaza's done. And I will tell you, the big issue, the big battle has yet to be fought, which is with Hezbollah in Lebanon. That won't only be when that happens, and I believe it's a matter of when, not if. There will be many, many more casualties, both among soldiers and among civilians, because Hezbollah has these long-range, many GPS-guided missiles, hundreds of thousands of them. So even if we're successful with the Iron Dome capacity to take out 90%, 10% of 150,000 getting through, that's a lot of damage.
Right. So, this morning in the news, I saw that there was a rather large rocket missile attack on, and I again apologize for my anglicized speaking.
Yeah.
Kiryat Shimona.
Yes.
In the north, right back, beautiful area, just
gorgeous
there
area.
in the foothills of the
gorgeous
mountains there between Israel and Lebanon. Had a big rocket attack, and you still have 80, 100,000 people from the north that have evacuated, that aren't living in their homes.
They can't be back in their homes. You know this. Part of what we've done with the Genesis 123 Foundation is we launched on October 8th the Israel Emergency Campaign. We're doing a lot of things, and anyone's invited to go to our website, genesis123.co, and check out what we're doing and be in touch. But one of the things that we've done really so beautifully on October 7th was a gorgeous sunny day. People didn't think they would need to bring winter clothing, much less have winter clothing. Now, it's a small country. Most soldiers have been home and restocked, but still, the army didn't have 300,000 winter jackets. So we got into, that's just something we stumbled into. And as of a month ago, in 7-week period, we donated over 1,000 jackets to soldiers. And I'm saying this not to be prideful or say, wow, we're so great. What we've done has been really great. But we were up in a makeshift artillery base on the Lebanese border, and I was told not to go past I can see it in my mind's eye, that building with the red roof, not more than 50 yards from where I was standing. They said, if you go past that building, the red roof, the terrorists can see you, you can see the terrorists, and they will potentially shoot at you. So I said very brazenly, well, I'm not afraid. And they all said, well, we are. So I didn't go past the building with the red roof. But no, there's about 100,000 Israeli citizens can't live in their homes in the north. And that is not a manageable situation. And the soldiers who are in the north know that there needs to be a battle to finish Hezbollah and the threats from Hezbollah as well.
I mean, I see the argument in the press about a buffer zone in Gaza because it's proven you can't you need distance between you.
Correct.
But Kiryat Shimona and Metula, they're right on Nahariya, they're right on the border there, and you can't tolerate the threat. And I went back and did some research from Alma Research, one of the great organizations, I think, that really deals with the problem in the north. And I showed some maps of the anticipated tunnel network in southern Lebanon, and it's way worse than Gaza was. Much worse than they thought.
Correct. Well said.
But this is much worse than
Gaza.
What they found in
Correct.
Gaza. I mean, it's hundreds and hundreds of miles, more tunnels, and through bedrock and that type of thing. It's an amazing problem.
Yes.
So I feel for the decision makers, but I've also seen, I think it was the historian Roberts in the House of Lords who said that the casualty ratio between civilian and military among the
combatants. They're not military. Yeah.
They is probably the best of any war in modern history.
Correct.
By far. And I noticed too, I watch the casualty rates. And I watch all these pro-Hamas lunatics that fill up my Twitter feed.
Right.
They've not seen, they're not talking about the casualty numbers all of a sudden. Because I think, Israel's learned to control that pretty well. Now, if they go into Rafah, then we're going to have another major problem. And they've kind of wound down operations a bit.
At the moment.
But the casualties are not being talked about that much. And they never talk about.
But it's still a genocide, isn't it?
The Hamas. Well, I've never understood the genocide concept because, when Israel evacuated Gaza, took all the Jews out of Gaza in 2005, what was the population of Gaza at that time? Maybe 1 million?
I don't know. Right.
And now it was 2.2 million when the war started.
Correct.
So that's like the most incompetent genocide.
That's what I said yesterday. Yep. 100%. No, it's nonsense, and I'm glad you raised that point. I thought you were going to go somewhere different with the conversation about casualties, but I'm thrilled and I'm proud of the fact that we have to first say, if you believe the Hamas numbers, right, just around 29,000 casualties total, even if that's right, which I don't believe, Israel's estimating that over 10,000 of them are terrorists. And that's our count, because we know how many we're taking out. So I rely on that. So let's assume that that's correct. And let's assume that 2 out of 3 people are non-combatants, although that's not really an accurate thing. There was a story I heard recently about 3 little boys in Gaza riding their bikes into a military area, and the protocol is to shoot if you're in a military area. They didn't. Our soldiers acted humanely and did not shoot the little boys. A few minutes later, a man came back after the boys did their rendezvous with an RPG. And so are they combatants, these little boys on their bicycles?
So they were almost being used as shields.
Not almost, not as shields, as spies, as going to sense where are the troops and are they responding, and we've seen a number of instances like that. And these are civilians, they're little children, they're mothers with babies. This is the evil. And at what point do you draw the line? And I say it somewhat rhetorically because I don't know the answer. I don't know the answer. But even if 2 civilian casualties for every one, there is not a war in modern mankind that has such low civilian casualty. And I'm proud of that. I'm proud of the fact that we are proactively not trying to kill civilians, and that we are proactively succeeding at killing terrorists, although by my record, there need to be many more terrorists who are killed.
Yeah, that's an issue. So we'll hope and pray that everything goes well with the operation has to be done. I know Netanyahu released his sort of day after plan. It's gotten a lot of press here in the United States. I've talked about it. And it just, you have to do this. And I will confess to you, I am very distressed because I know what Genesis 12:3 says. I mean, your whole organization is based on that verse.
Correct.
And I don't like the way our administration is acting, particularly the crazy people in the State Department that are running around doing this diplomacy and putting pressure on Israel. And that thing I heard today was that, well, Israel will have to sign off on certain protocols about using
weapons,
supplies that may have come from the United States. And, hopefully Israel, I think, is capable of defending itself. And I don't like that they've sort of gotten into this dependent relationship a little bit with the U.S. in some respects.
Well, but the problem, of course, is that we don't produce enough arms on our own. So we need shells, and to his credit, the Biden administration has not cut off arms. The closest so far, it seems to be saying there needs to be a protocol of how you're using what we send you. But Obama was not so kind. Obama, and by the way, this is also very important for people to know. When Obama cut off, I think it was Hellfire missiles, it actually helped increase the civilian casualties because the Hellfire that Obama cut off were more precision. So Israel had to use less precise weapons in order to take out terrorists. So I hope that Biden, as we're sitting in Michigan, I hope that he's actually mindful of the fact that maybe he needs to have rhetoric here. Although, as I put on my social media yesterday, no amount of pandering is going to appease the terrorist arm of the Democratic Party.
Right, and they had the primary in Michigan yesterday, and Biden actually did much better than a lot of people thought he would, because they thought that the left, the political left, and the rather large population over in a town about 30 minutes away from here that we refer to as Dearbornistan would vote heavily against him, and it might bleed over into other communities with it. And that didn't appear to be the case.
Not only that, but I was watching commentary last night and sitting in Ann Arbor. I wanted to send messages to all the news. They're saying apparently 1/3 of voters here in Ann Arbor voted for the uncommitted. But that's a false number, first of all, because Michigan is on spring break right now. So students who aren't Michigan residents are home or in Florida or wherever they are for spring break, and they weren't voting anyway. That's not a accurate representation of the population. And I don't know what it means, other than there are a lot of crazy people here in Ann Arbor who did vote for uncommitted. But look, America needs to be committed. America needs to embrace the verse of Genesis 12:3, and America needs to understand that Israel is the only significant ally in the Middle East. And we'll buy arms because we need arms, because we have to defend ourselves. But no one's asking for American troops to be on the ground. And I met a lot of American servicemen in the last 2 weeks who are begging. They want to come over and they want to come over and fight with us. But we don't ask for that. No Americans are going to lose their lives because of our war.
Right. So, and then we had this tragedy of this military guy in the U.S. who set himself on fire outside the Israeli embassy, saying "Free Palestine." And in my view, he died for a lie. So that's it's terrible. I mean, it's just. But I've told you this. My social media is just full of anti-Israel, anti-Jew hatred, animosity, hatred. Really unlike anything that I've ever seen. So let me ask you a question. So you, at some point in your life, decided to make Aliyah, to move to Israel. How did you go about that process?
Mm.
And then what would you take from that experience if somebody came to you today, a Jewish person living in the United States, say in New York, Detroit, Cleveland, the Cleveland area where you'll be tomorrow? What would you say to them? What would be the advice that you would give them? How did you make the decision, and what advice would you give?
I've wanted to live in Israel since I was a teenager. My father was what I refer to as an original Palestinian. He was born in Haifa in 1937 while the British were occupying the land of Israel, and when in the period the only reference to Palestine was a geographic entity that the British controlled. And Palestinians were Jews, were my father, my grandparents, and their Jewish neighbors. There was no such ethnicity as Palestinian Arabs. So when I first went to Israel as a teenager, I wanted to live there. I wanted to be part of that. I wanted to be a recipient of this amazing gift that God gave us through as a covenant through Abraham and Isaac and Jacob. And so that was immediate. And when I met my wife, I guess we're going on 33 years next month, that was on both of our radars. And 20 years ago next month, I came to Israel on what's called a pilot trip to look for work. On the idea, and we were still, you know this, John, we were still in the end. Well, we didn't know it was the end. We were still in the midst of what was called the Second Intifada, with buses and cafes and malls and things being blown up by terrorists all the time. And I came to look for work. I had 5 children at the time, and I thought that if I could find work during that week, we would move that summer. I found that I could get work. I went home. I resigned from my job. We sold our house at then what was the height of the market. A lovely little gift from God. We packed our entire house into a 40-foot shipping container, and on August 4th, we arrived in Israel. So this is our 20th anniversary. And I would tell anybody, especially what's going on in America now, it's not the America I grew up in. And even if it were, Israel's still the best place to be. It's an amazing society. It's the place for Jews to live. Not that America doesn't have opportunities and hasn't had opportunities, but I'm honestly afraid that we've seen that peak, and this may be the beginning of the end of the American Jewish diaspora.
So, while we were talking beforehand, you got some information from you went to university. And tell them what you learned from your text.
I got a text from a friend, Faith. Shout out to Faith, who sent me a text. Hey, hope you're well. Any ideas how to help Emory Jewish students on campus? Not sure if you saw, but there are calls for an intifada on campus. Now, I was just on the Emory campus 2 weeks ago. Exactly. There's some bad stuff going on there. It's not unique. It shouldn't be happening. It shouldn't be tolerated or permitted. Anyone calling for intifada is a threat for violent anti-Semitism and should be expelled and thrown off campus and put in jail, as far as I'm concerned. But yeah, it's happening. It's happening everywhere.
Yeah, we see it even in Columbus. We see some of the protests, and it's I don't know. So we always talk in Christian circles about the first they come for the Saturday people, then they come for the Sunday people.
I agree with that. And that's one of the things, John, that's so profound since October 7th. Not that we didn't know this before, but the enemy is a common enemy. We share. Why do we build bridges between Jews and Christians in general, but through the Genesis 1-2-3 foundation? We have pivotal things that we don't agree on theologically, but far more that we do. And the opposite of that coin is not just what we agree on, we have a common enemy. And that enemy, Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, ISIS, Iran, the Iranian regime. I have a good friend who's an Iranian Christian, and I always have to correct myself. It's not Iran, it's the Iranian regime, the Islamic regime, that is hostile to Israel and hostile to Jews and hostile to Christians. We have a common enemy, and that's been highlighted in our face since October 7th. And that's why I think one of the reasons that we're seeing unprecedented support for Israel and the Jewish people among Christians, not in 75 years, but in the history of the church.
Right. Now, I will say, too, I've been very disappointed in a lot of people who claim the name of Christ, who claim to be Christians, and how they've reacted to this. It's very, and it's on both sides of the political spectrum.
Agreed. And there's work to be done, but we're seeing unprecedented levels of support. And I think we need to, not in a bad way, exploit that, build upon that, because I think truly it's never been more profoundly evident that Jews and Christians are on the same side of the coin. We're the only people who worship the Creator, and we're
the God of the Bible is not the God of the Quran.
No, and not only that, but we didn't get into this yet. Maybe as a teaser, but my peace plan for Gaza is that we have an army. Yeah, you want to go there?
Let's talk about this, because you put an article. It was in the Washington Times.
Yes.
Yesterday or the day before.
Monday. Yeah.
And the title. Well, tell us what the title is, and why did you, an Orthodox Jewish person, because I've sent the article to some people, and I said this was written by an Orthodox Jewish friend of mine. They're like, you're making that up. It's not possible. So, what's the title of the article, and what's the message you were?
So I don't remember what title they gave the article.
Well, the title of the article is the peace plan. Something about the peace plan for
Gaza is Jesus. Yes. So Israel's being pushed for a two-state solution, which is very sad, because even if I disagree politically with people in the administration, they're not stupid people. And to me, the whole idea of a two-state solution, especially today, is terribly ignorant. It just shows how stupid you are to think that you could even suggest that now, or that there's anyone to implement it, or that that's a proper policy and response to this massive, inhumane terror attack. So for all of those reasons and others, two-state solution is nonsense. And then I've really been thinking critically, because when I went to college, you actually did think critically a little bit. And okay, so what's the solution? Are we going to continue to live like this forever? Is there another geopolitical solution? Is there another diplomatic solution? And I realized, no, the solution is that we need an army of 100,000. I think the number might need to be higher, closer to 200,000 Christians who are going to come in and rebuild Gaza. And Gaza needs a lot of rebuilding. It's not yet, but I actually think that there's an opportunity to put a foundation in place so that at that time, from under the ground up, including every social element, every humanitarian, every educational component of what it takes to build a society, as well as physically, there's roads and the buildings and transportation. There is an opportunity to create a tremendously successful Gaza for some 2 million Gazans. However, if they still are worshiping Allah, and they still continue to believe that we as Jews have no place in the land and no history and are foreign occupiers, then we're never going to get out of this cycle, and then it's a silly conversation. So I want the 200,000 Christian volunteers or workers to go in to be in charge of rebuilding it all. Because Christians, more than anyone else in the world, I believe, love human beings and want the well-being of 2 million Gazans. And they also love us, the Jewish people in Israel. And they won't allow the Gazans under their watch to rebuild terrorist infrastructure. They won't allow the Gazans to rearm. They won't allow the Gazans to build tunnels for any purpose other than sewage and transportation. These are not things that can happen. And when fed a diet of love and acceptance through Jesus, and I'm saying this as an Orthodox Jew who does not believe what Christians believe about Jesus as Messiah, but I think that Jesus is probably the remedy for all Gentiles, specifically for Muslims and Palestinian Arabs, that when that happens, they'll realize that Allah has failed them, that this diet of hate that they've been force-fed for so many decades is not working for them, and that through that, when they come to love the God of Israel, they'll love the people of Israel, and then they'll understand the significance of the state of Israel, and that brings us back to Israel the Miracle. And honestly, as crazy it is, and you have friends who couldn't believe that anyone would say that, much less an Orthodox Jew, that's the only viable solution.
Right, but it requires the right kind of behavior on the part of Christians
Correct.
as well, because there are many Christians. Look, there's a really bad history between Christians and Jews, and I know there's been a lot of efforts over the past years to rectify that. And essentially what you're proposing is replacing UNRWA and the education system that they built with something different to re-educate the entire population.
To completely to show them that everything that they believed has failed, and that there is potential and there is hope, and they can create a vibrant, thriving society. And sure, I wouldn't mind driving an hour and a half from my home to the beaches in a prosperous Gaza, where I can still pick up a kosher hamburger, and because they'll be catering to their Israeli neighbors and friends with a relatively open border. I really do believe. Look, it'll take a miracle to make all of this happen, but I've got people talking.
But having traveled around, as we were able to do, Judea and Samaria,
yes,
the central highlands, biblical heartland of the Bible. I mean, there are places I've been that you've never been able to go.
Correct.
We were talking about,
and I wouldn't go to because it's not safe.
You wouldn't go there right now,
but I wouldn't go places in Detroit either.
You're not crazy, but and see, I was in Ohio when I'm coming up here to Ann Arbor, which in football terms is kind of viewed as an evil empire.
There we go.
That team up north, as we call it. But there's and I know in Netanyahu's plan, he talked about re-educating the populace, because I've read what the textbook said, and you've got to completely start over.
Right,
and the young people in Gaza, which are a significant portion of the population, they've never known anything other than Hamas.
They've never known anything other than Hamas. No Arab state, not even the ones that we have peace with, can be relied upon to do that re-education, because one of the reasons that they're armed is because the Arab states have winked and allowed things to come in and be paying bribes. So no Arab state can be relied upon to do this. No Western state can be relied upon to do this. And I really think the only solution is that they become a Christian entity and try loving people instead of hating and killing us.
So that leads us to this. I would highly recommend, I'll put a link in the description down below about the article you wrote. Now let's talk a little bit about your book, Israel The Miracle. Why'd you write it? What are you trying to accomplish?
God told me to write it. It was an idea from October of 22. I was working with a publisher on something entirely different, and I got this idea, hey, we're celebrating the 75th anniversary. We should have a book of essays by Christian leaders from all over the world, why Israel is significant to Christians and themselves, to celebrate Israel's 75th anniversary. My publisher's amazing, and they came up with even a better format, which is a coffee table book. So each essay of these 75 essays are illustrated by fabulous photos and art, all donated by the artists and photographers.
And I see that they are.
It's stunning. It's stunning. And you know me, John. I'm not an immodest person. The fact that I was able to put this book together, I still figuratively am pinching myself in this amount of time as well. To have a book published like this in 9 months is crazy. It's unheard of. And that's a miracle in and of itself. And really the idea is that because it's every continent except Antarctica, multiple denominations, multiple ethnicities, what else? Demographically, we're talking about people in their 20s and 30s up until their 80s and 90s. I can't legitimately say it's the breadth of the church, but my goodness, it's a great, what's the word? Very broad depiction of the church and why Christians love Israel. And when you look at it, here, I just opened, here's a great one. Robert Mawiri, Pastor Becky Keenan. It's all alphabetical except for Pat Robertson's essay, because he died just as we were getting ready to go to print. And so we moved his essay up to the front, which is out of proper.
Yeah, I picked it up. I just opened up and I came to Michelle Bachman's page.
Right. So it goes, it's in alphabetical order. And it's just stunning. And they're short essays, 700, 800 words to maybe 1,200 and 1,400 words. So you can sit and engage one. And here's one page, Reverend Willem Glasauer, who's from the Netherlands, page 99. It's one page of text. And then Pastor Trey Graham, another.
And by the way, his article is titled Israel's Glorious Future.
Right, correct. Anne Graham Lotz, Why I Love Israel. She's got a 2-page spread. Her essay is a little bit longer, very personal, very, very well done, and coming from the love that her father, Billy Graham, instilled in her. And so you can, one of the things I love about this, and documented it with my own grandchildren, is that you can sit a child or grandchild on your lap, look at these gorgeous pictures, each one from a different author, different perspective, different pictures, and you can narrate that, and you can just do a 10 or 15-minute deep dive into the personal feelings of one person. And yeah, the money is going to war-related projects. And so we want everyone to get the book. And I don't want to forget to say again, IsraelTheMiracle.com. And please use as my gift the discount code Jonathan10 when you check out, and you get 10% off. But you're going to love it. I was interviewed somewhere recently, I don't remember where, and someone said, "What's your goal?" I said, I want when people who are 50 today buy the book, and in 30, 40 years, when they're no longer around, that this book will become one of those family heirlooms that the kids fight over. So the person said, "You want to create family discord, don't you?" I said, "No, you can buy as many books as you want."
So I think it's a great book. I've looked through it. Highly recommend it. And look, I just want to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule.
Thank you for driving all the way up here, John. It's a real blessing.
It was my pleasure.
Yeah,
as
me
always.
too.
And we'll have to make a regular. I want to do something with you at least monthly. So we've made 3 months in a row, I think.
Okay.
We almost missed out on February, but we got that extra day.
Thank God. Okay.
So this is being recorded on February 28th. So any parting words, like what would you like to see Christians do as kind of an action plan to help out?
Get the book, know what's going on, understand. I know people watching know what's right and wrong, but I know we don't necessarily. There are a lot of competing narratives. There's a lot of chatter out there, and it's hard sometimes to actually articulate defense. Keep following John. I'm not the only guest that he has who sheds light and important context on what's going on. Know what's going on, and be engaged and be involved, and pray and pray. Even if you don't have one of these bracelets, pray for the hostages until they all come home. 134 of them. They all need to come back, dead or alive, and pray that someone will see my peace plan and it'll get traction and please God in my lifetime work.
Thanks so much for doing